look at you.
Hi.
I'm so proud of you to have like your background there.
You know what? I thought caregivers need to see something scenic and beautiful.
And yes, I completely agree. They do. They do.
Yes.
I'm super excited about this. I think this is going to be fun.
I am too. Thank
I'm
you
looking forward to it.
so much for joining me. So this is the first time you and I have seen each other face to face.
Yes.
And we spoke once briefly on the phone. And I know that you took care of your mom.
I did. You know, I was so excited to talk to you. And my mom passed away now. And it's been a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 4 right now, which is wow. But I kind of went back and I thought a lot about what it was like for a caregiver and what that meant. And remembering what I was going through, when you're going through and it's for your family member, that piece of it is so fragile to the caregiver's heart because you're so emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And when you are launched into that role without even realizing that you accepted that position, that's a whole nother route for caregivers. And then they sit there and everybody would call me and friends would call and I would get text messages and it was, how are you doing? You know, which is great. And my answer was always fine.
Fine.
Well, fine, fine. You know, but as you're looking at your person you're caring for, you're thinking, you know, I'm not sick, I'm not aging, I'm not feeble. I have nothing to complain about. I'm good. But you know what? Really, that fine, as I look back and I laugh about it with my girlfriends, it stands for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted.
Oh my
And
gosh, I
I know that
love
there's
that.
caregivers. You know, it is because you don't realize how hard it is until you go home or you're checked out or you know that that person's okay. Because let's face it, there's a category of people that are caregivers because they've got empathy, compassion. And then there's a category of love for your family member. And that you can do this. You know, I was younger, I thought I can do this. But you know what? Patience is not my virtue. I pray for it consistently, but you know, compassion, yes, I have it for sure now, but looking back when you're in it, it stands for that I was walking around freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted.
Yeah.
And anybody that does that, like, okay, so then it was funny because I was thinking about it. Neurotic behavior is an unconscious effort to handle that anxiety that you create being a caregiver, you know, assuming all of those are these cares being met and are you doing that job correctly? And, you know, you're going through that mental checklist or your regular checklist. And, you know, there are heroes that don't get enough credit because you don't realize how difficult it is until you're after the fact. And this has taken me, though, Michelle, years. And it changed my journey because I was working in a very fluffy, cushy position where it was for a local restaurant group who I just adore. And I had a great position there. And I remember thinking, it changed me so much because I literally wasn't prepared for that ticket of you're going to become a caregiver and figure all this out. And so then that's what led me into senior living. And that's how I've gotten to where I'm at because I was one of those family members trying to figure out how do you get from point A, B, C, D. And there is no guide, you know, it's very challenging.
It really is. And the caregiver role, I think there's this slow evolution to it. Like it starts with maybe you're
Well,
picking up some.
you took care of your.
Yes. I took care of both of my grandmothers over the course of 7 years. And so the caregiving role, there's an evolution to it and it's really subtle. And then the next thing you know, you're just so deep in the weeds of it. That was my experience. It starts with like, oh, I'm just going to pop in and check on you. Okay, now I'm going to like bring you groceries sometimes. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to bring you groceries and to check your meds. And it's just this slow little evolution. And I love that. It's not the fine definition that you give because it's such a quick, easy response. But we're not fine. Like,
No,
I'm not okay.
no,
Every time,
big asterisks.
yeah, every time the phone rang for 7 years, my heart was just in my throat, wondering, is this it? Are they okay? What now? What's this day going to unfold? And I don't know about you, but it would never failed. It was like 8 o'clock on a Friday night was when we were discussing if we needed to do a hospital visit. Like it wasn't, Wednesday at 3. It was,
No,
it was
no.
always like put off until the hardest time when you knew you'd end up in an ER until like 2 a.m. So, yeah.
And I don't know how other people feel, and I'm just loving to share my story. But for me, I just kept thinking, okay, God, you say you can only handle what you can give me, what I can take.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the people that you're caring for, and you're trying to, not only their atmosphere, are they, and then you're trying to analyze. And this is so true with people with dementia as well, because they can't communicate. There is a rock in my shoe, so
Right.
you're literally going from trying to figure these things out. And I would leave, and even if I would go, and this sounds so silly, but I'm just going to tell you, Michelle, I would go into the bathroom to use the facility for myself, and I would sit in there, and then it was like, that was when I could remember to breathe at times. And it was like, I can't even remember, am I breathing?
Right.
Did I eat? Did I, and all these things, and you could tell now I eat and I'm just fine. But all these things when you're in the moment are so hard. And to call another person and to be able to reach out and to communicate. And then, so going back just a little bit, communication is so important between who you're caring for and the caregiver.
Yeah.
I think my generation, we're scared to ask those tough questions. What do you want? What are your wishes? How,
Right.
getting that information is so important. When they can when that person needs it, they need to be able to tell you. Communication, and then communication from the caregiver to resources, to reaching out to other caregivers, to call and say, I am so confused. There was a line from Steel Magnolias, and I remember this gentleman was so confused he didn't know whether to wind his butt or scratch his watch.
Yeah.
And I walk around and I'm like, did I do this? That reaching out to your friends and saying, you know what, I'm not fine, even though you're not the one that is needing the assistance, you need it mentally more than you know.
Yeah.
And that is so important. And then someone who's been down that road that can help and say, I understand. And, did you eat today? If you eat and sleep, you're going to feel better. Try to write things down so it's not floating around in your brain.
Right.
To remember, because that's causing so much anxiety. It's the little tips for these caregivers to sit and breathe and laugh and try to laugh.
Yes.
whoever you're whoever you're caring for, they need to laugh as well.
Right.
So do it together. Those are really important, I think.
Yeah.
So, but it's the heroes that don't get to speak that that caregiving is very hard. And you look up even the definition of caregiving, and it's like an unpaid or paid, uneducated, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's not enough words to describe what caregivers do.
Right.
But they're definitely need to have that encouragement from other caregivers as well.
There's 65 million people acting as unpaid caregivers in our country. It's incredible. 65 million people. And like I said, I think a lot of people don't identify as a caregiver. They're just helping out their family member. But then it's this slow evolution into more and more responsibility. I love what you said about having the hard conversations, because I think sometimes it's hard to know what questions to ask. And then have the courage to do it. I had like a binder where I tried to take notes on things too, just like a central location for information, because it never failed that, you needed to have this med list printed, or I don't know, when was the last time they XYZ. So it's nice to have it all in a central location.
And writing it down and I'm usually fly by the seat of my pants, but Michelle, you're completely right. Write everything down. I mean, even to the bitter end, I wrote things down, and because it's very mentally draining. But communication, I've spoken to a couple geriatric physicians, and the hardest part with them is they want the kids to be able to have these conversations with their family members of their wishes and their wills and their wants. Not just, how do you want to be cared for? How can you expect that? Those kind of things are really important.
Was your mother okay with having your help? Was that a battle between the two of you? Was she willing to let you help her out and step in?
Yeah, her drop was very quickly. And then, and to the point where, yes, there was no choice. And at the time, and this is one of those things where we, I don't know why, but I've always said this is, our family, this is where we're going to be buried. This is what, but I knew her wish at the time. She was living in St. Louis, and I knew her wish was always to pass in Omaha. She was born in Omaha and passed away in Omaha. And right there, when the doctor's given us the news that this isn't going to be much longer, I booked a plane. I poor little savings account at the time. I booked a private plane and got her home. And meanwhile, I was setting up hospice as well. And I had her, then brought her from St. Louis to my home.
Oh my goodness.
And she was able to pass away in Omaha. Yeah. Wow. So, and reach out to, for me at the end, hospice is such a scary word for people that don't understand what it is. And I didn't at the time. And they were huge help to not only my mother, but to myself as the caregiver. You don't realize what a toll it takes when you're just around the clock 24/7, and that RN comes in at the end and she's looking at you like, I'm going to go ahead and take your blood pressure. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Right.
So there again, fine, that freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted. I was not fine. So those things too, what is out there, people don't know what it is. Please don't be afraid to ask. Just reach out and ask the questions.
Did your mom know she was going on hospice? Because I think that's something that I'm hearing reoccurring with people is like, how do you have that parent or conversation with your parent? Because they're freaked out about the word too.
You know what? honestly, at the time, and this is, Michelle, that's a great question. At the time, I just did it.
Yeah.
I literally, I remember the doctor saying, this is what needs to happen. And I think that the doctor was looking at me like, this woman does not know, and I didn't. And I remember I had a great friend that flew in and had, the hospice set up, the bed was delivered, everything was done before I got home, and my whole front room of my home got turned into a
Nursing home.
beautiful bedroom.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm very, give me a good chandelier and I'm good to go. And I mean, we had flowers and I got new lighting in there. And I mean, I was just like, I wanted to make it so peaceful for her. And I was blessed to have her for, she was great. And no, I just did it. I
Yeah.
just did it. And I just said at the time, this nurse is going to come and make sure we're good. And, I didn't have those conversations that I wish I would have had.
Yeah. Do you feel?
Because I just didn't. Go ahead, Michelle. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I just didn't realize that when you're in it, you also don't realize sometimes you don't want to accept that package. You don't want to accept that that is happening to you or your family member. So I remember
Right.
thinking, I'm not going to accept this package. This isn't over. You've got 20, 30 good years left. I'm too young. I'm not going to be a motherless daughter at this age. So we're not going to accept this package. We're going to pray for a miracle. And I think that that was the encouragement and optimism that probably I needed to fight to get through. I needed that. I needed to feel that to keep doing what I was doing on a daily basis. So those are one of those things that too, having somebody intervene that has already been a caregiver or reaching out to another caregiver to get that information is just brutal because you feel like you're giving up on them.
Right.
And you're not. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's
The
really about
caregiver thing is
quality of life.
definitely. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It is. It really is. But yeah, there's this when someone says that they, cared for, there's that. I cared for my family member. You're right, Michelle. They don't realize that they're the caregiver until they're out of it.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
if you're caring for someone's needs, you're a caregiver.
Right. So which it's really becomes part of your identity, even if you don't identify with the title. How was it for you when she passed away? I think that's just another thing that I'm hearing from caregivers is I don't know who I am now. Like I don't know what to do. I was doing all these things before. This is my whole day was structured around this person and now I'm lost. So for you, what was that like?
The irony for me is I did have two small children, so I had to switch. But even then, it's just like, remember when we were single, Michelle, and we got our first apartment, and all of a sudden you would talk to your friends, and it's like, what are you going to do this weekend? I have to clean my apartment. Like that was the biggest thing of the weekend to get done.
Yes.
Besides going out with your friends and in the movies or whatever. And then you'd be like, oh my gosh, but I have to. It's going to take me all day. Well, now it's one of those things that you've crammed so much into one day that, yeah, when they're gone and then you're sitting there and it's the release of that anxiety of being fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into this whole mode. I was depressed, but she was my mother. I was depressed. I was raw. And you still think about, did I write that down? And it's the oddest thing that it trickles through. And that those things are really, you're right. It's pretty horrid afterwards trying to figure out what you're going to do. But again, I'm a laughter through tears emotion is my favorite. So if I can like laugh through the cries with the, you know, the loneliness, and did I do everything that I could have done to make it her transition as amazing as possible? And yeah, what am I going to do all day? That's a tough one.
Right.
You go through an identity crisis that you didn't even know you were doing.
Right. I appreciate you being willing to share this, because I think it's going to help other people, at least to hear other or have someone else hear, okay, this makes sense. This sort of validates how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling this way. I think it's, you know, we're kind of closeted and we tend to get in isolation as caregivers. And I think, you know, your bubble becomes smaller when you're taking care of somebody else, because the invitations stop coming, or people say, well, you know, she probably can't. And so I think it's so important that people are sharing their stories. And Heidi, I'm so grateful that you're willing to share with me.
Michelle, I think it's an awesome thing that you're doing. It really is. I think it's pretty amazing. It sounds really weird, but I'm proud of somebody that's standing up and saying caregivers need to hear this. So way to go, Michelle.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm gonna get this posted out to YouTube, and we'll just start spreading the word.
All right, honey.
All right.
Well, good luck. Let me know if you need anything.
I will.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.